Keys to the Commonwealth, a podcast where we share the real stories of local community members who are using real estate to build personal wealth, along with tips and tricks from professionals across the industry. And now, your host, Landry Fields.
Welcome back to another episode of the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. I'm your host, Landry Fields. We are sponsored today here in the Nova Insurance Group recording studio. We can help you out with all of your investment insurance needs, home and auto insurance needs, and so forth. So give us a call. We're proud to be an advisor of sorts in that, to kind of find the best options and policies that fit your interests, your needs, and your risk in that sense. So my guest today, I'm pleased to welcome, is a good friend of mine. I've known him for a couple of years now, originally from Russel Springs, Kentucky. But he's lived in the Lexington area since he came to UK for a couple of years. But he is the founding principal of Kingdom Equity Fund and also the host of the soon-to-be-launched Kingdom Investor podcast that is actually debuting tomorrow, so be sure to check that out. He is married to his beautiful bride, Kaitlin, and together they have two awesome kids, Isaiah and Amelia. It is my pleasure to welcome Daniel White today to the Keys to the Commonwealth studio. Daniel, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely, Landry. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we've been kind of having conversations that we were wanting to do this for a while now, as far as having you on the show. We were kind of waiting until, obviously, some of the things that you've got, cooking over there with the Kingdom Equity Fund, kind of a little bit further along the path, because I kind of want to dive in more, obviously, to your story, what the Kingdom Fund is doing, but also just for those who don't know, what the idea of syndication and funds, equity funds are, obviously. So that's a whole nother ballgame, a whole nother step above just investing into some homes or duplexes or so forth. So before we do so jump back in the DeLorean and kind of what got you into real estate and brought you to Lexington and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up in Russel Springs, small town, my dad had a contractor build our house and on the family farm, and I was about 9 and was homeschooled, and so I was able to do my work really early in the morning and then go to the job site and watch them, help them, pick up tools, whatever, and they just would slow down and explain how they were building it and what they were doing and everything, and involve me in the process. And with a really mechanical mind, that really, drew me into construction. And,
there's something about learning while doing kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
That's so valuable, I think.
Yeah. And they let me help and see it come together and everything. It was really neat. And, did that a couple more times and just, kind of grew up around construction from then on, and did some independent contract work in high school and things like that. And then, really thought about, okay, how do I start making money? How do I start businesses? And got really interested in entrepreneurship and, calculating like, okay, how many lawns do I need to mow to, do this and hire people and then, thinking about, okay, how many jobs do I need to take on and different things like that. Ended up having an awesome opportunity when I was about 17 to enter an entrepreneurship contest at a local college, Lindsey Wilson College.
Yeah.
And entered that competition, came up with a unique business concept, and ended up winning the competition. And the judges were like, hey, you need to start this business. So ended up starting my first business when I was 17. And that was really cool online fitness company.
Okay.
That would match personal fitness trainers with people who wanted to work out, and they would actually use Skype to communicate.
Okay.
And so I learned a lot through that process.
Skype, what the business that was lost when COVID hit, type of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is pre Zoom, pre internet actually like working all the time. And so I'm like telling people, okay, you got to plug in your router, you got to, and coaching them through like how to even like download Skype at the time. Right.
Right.
So it was a little ahead of its time, but it taught me a lot about entrepreneurship. And so then, after moving to Lexington for UK, I went to school for mechanical engineering. And
makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, you'd think.
Right.
And so I went there for about 2.5 years and met my beautiful wife. And that was really the reason I went. Right. looking back, because I dropped out very shortly after meeting her. I wanted to get married and saw just how
The old "I dropped out of college and I want to marry your daughter" conversation.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was.
I'm
that
sure
was
that's a whole nother story.
Well, yeah, it is absolutely. So, and yeah, so I got to the point where I was looking at the job opportunities in mechanical engineering, and I was like, I really don't want to be stuck behind a desk, working on a computer, CAD software, and isolated from like what I thought as like helping people and problem solving and and that type of thing. And so really wanted to get back into business for myself. And so I dropped out, started a business in construction. Okay. and ran that for about 5 years. So
you used to have a team of people and employees and so forth like that as well.
Yep. So we had about 9 employees, and it was right angle home repair. So we focused on smaller remodeling projects, kitchen, bathroom remodeling, all the way down to handyman services. So we had a lot of projects going on at the same time, and we would do that. And then, that's what really led us into getting into real estate, because we got to a point where we were, making some extra money. We were like, okay, what do we do with this? How do we steward this well? And we started thinking about what can we invest in that's really going to matter and make a difference. Yeah. And so we looked at the stock market, and we didn't really like how, it was just like kind of leaving it up to chance. And somebody else was in control of our money. Sure. We couldn't influence the value of those stocks at all. And we were like, well, if we buy real estate, we can fix it up, we can, improve it, we can change it. And through that process, we can add value to it, right?
And it's easy to pivot and do other things with, or as opposed to, sitting in the stock market, it's not, you could change some stocks around, but, you can't just take it to a different direction necessarily very easily or without a lot of penalty.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And there's, multiple reasons to get into real estate. And there's also multiple ways that you can make money in real estate. But one of the other reasons that we did it was that our team would not have as many jobs during the winter. And, construction is very cyclical, seasonal, and it is, we would be able to buy a house and flip it during the winter to keep our guys busy. And so that was like, okay, that makes sense. Let's, try that. And we ended up, flipping a few properties, and then we were like, okay, well, this is just kind of added work. How do we really invest long-term and start to generate cash flow and passive income and something that's going to be able to grow over time, right? Yeah. And so we started to do the Burr method, and we started to buy rental property, and that was just so much better, I think.
What time frame was that in, as far as doing more Burr method stuff?
Yeah, good question. So that was really more around, I want to say like 2018. Okay. Probably we started to do that. So
before, I mean, it was still a good time. I guess it sounds to me like early 2010s. Like it was like, I guess coming out of the 2008, recession, it seemed like there was so much opportunity. You could almost like pick practically, not pick, but there was just so much more ample. Why am I blanking on words today? But there's a lot more out there as far as the availability of things to get involved in, as far as rental properties to pick from, and so forth. So then absolutely. You kind of transition and you start realizing about what time frame that, you wanted to kind of take a different path then.
Yeah. Well, what we really thought about was, how are we really investing in a way that's going to change lives? Yeah. And, both my wife and I have come into a personal relationship with God through Jesus. Yeah. And that transformed our lives. And, we went, complete 180-degree turn, right? And so through that, we were like, okay, how do we really share this with others? And we had an opportunity, or I had an opportunity earlier on to do mission work in Chicago for about 4 months or so.
Okay.
And, that's where God really opened my eyes to kind of the challenge of missionaries getting funded.
Yeah.
And so you have these people who are wanting to start these ministries, and some of them going even to different countries and
churches,
sharing the
medical
gospel
stuff, schools, orphanages, all that. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the breakdown was that they weren't good at raising support, raising funds, and it was just a really burdensome task for them, right?
Yeah.
And there was one time where the missions director and I were driving to a prison because we were doing prison ministry, and we were on the interstate, and she was sharing about how difficult it was for her to get funded, and really how her vision was not able to come to fruition because of the lack of funding. And I was like, well, that just breaks my heart, because all of these people could have experienced life change and could have really transformed communities and families, but it just didn't happen because she didn't have the right connections, and there weren't enough people to support it and everything. So that really kind of put a burden on my heart to really use business and investing to then fund missions and be able to support missions through that. And so what we started doing is we would use the cash flow that we were producing from our rental property, and we would give that to different missionaries that we supported.
Okay.
And so it would create a sustainable funding model for them, right? And we would use the portion of the principal and the investment that we put in to the property for long-term appreciation and loan pay down and growth.
Right.
And so the equity would then grow. And so that portion would be kind of a financial investment for us. But the cash flow portion we would actually give away.
I see.
And so we could give to more missionaries. We could sustainably fund different mission initiatives.
Yeah.
And it was really, it helped us to have more impact on more lives.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a cool concept, and thinking outside the box there for sure, in a way that's almost like sustainable, like renewable energy, almost in some respects there. So before we go too far into that, you definitely want to go see where we're at with that. What's happening with that. So, in essence, we talked about you're part of the Kingdom Equity Fund, or the founding principal for that, and so there's different levels. Obviously, once we get past kind of general portfolios of real estate, where we can do syndications, and then also equity or real estate funds. So explain a little bit of the difference for those who may or may not know the difference between what a syndication would be, as well as what you're doing, and the difference of that as far as a real estate fund.
Yeah. So over the last year or 18 months or so, I've been able to network and meet incredible people all over the country, most of them in the real estate industry. And, I'm looking for building relationships with people that have been very successful in real estate over the last several decades. And so people who really know the real estate game very, very well.
Yeah.
But not only that, but people who are Christian operators, and they really care about their tenants. They want to impact the world. They want to be generous and live generous lives. And
because to that point, there's a great opportunity to, even like on my, me and my business partner Andrews, and just to pour in. And we've talked with several other, obviously, real estate investors, where they really value that aspect, because you can have a poor experience as a tenant with a landlord, but you can also have a great one in the sense of like really trying to meet them where they're at and love on them in ways that you can, type of thing. I know recently we just had a tenant who, I think they had a sister or some kind of family member that they were having a new baby, and maybe it was a surprise baby, I don't know. And they were literally trying to find stuff in all honesty, they were trying to find things we had a house across the street we acquired, and they were trying to dig through the trash of some children's stuff that we had set up on the curb as we were just kind of obviously getting everything out of the house so we could renovate it. And so we got talking to them and kind of realized, what they were doing, why they were doing it. And we're like, you know what? I'm like, I got a garage full of stuff I'm trying to get rid of that, we're trying to maybe move past the baby stage. And so we were able to kind of like give a bunch of clothes away to them or some other things and like that. And it's like those little things that, can make all the difference in the world sometimes, even just if you're like me, just a few rental properties and so forth, to what you were saying.
Yeah. And if you just start the conversation with your tenants and are proactive in hearing them, a lot of times their requests are super easy. Mm-hmm. And just doing a few of those things can really go a long way too. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a recent story, and it just reminded me of that and how, even as a new real estate investor, how cool that was at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in meeting all of these, really fascinating, incredible people, they've really encouraged me to think a lot bigger. And you think about buying a couple of houses or a couple of duplexes or, different things, but there's this whole nother level of buying real estate and acquiring real estate. And what you get into, for example, how does one buy like $100 million apartment community, or, how do you even do that?
Because there is a point where we reach our maximum. Banks are kind of like, all right, you're kind of maxed out, or other stuff. You're like, I want to buy more, but I'm kind of limited. And so that's where some of these next steps or playbook scenarios come into play here.
Exactly. So, it's a different process. And so, if you're looking at just individual houses or a couple duplexes, one person can buy those. They have all the cash for the down payment. They have, they can bring the debt and they can bring all the pieces together.
Sure.
And, hire trades and contractors and do all of it, right? But when you move into commercial real estate, it's much more a team sport.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different people involved. And there are kind of specialists that do the management or do the operations or, find the real estate or operate the real estate. So there's
at that point, it becomes a full-fledged, it's kind of like becoming a full-fledged business in real estate investing at that point.
Exactly. Yes.
So syndicating or, doing a real estate fund.
Yeah. So, just to kind of explain it, if you're looking at acquiring, say, $100 million property, you would need, at least $25 million of capital, right? Of cash to put down. And, where are you going to get that? Most people don't have $25 million sitting around. Yeah. So, but what if you could go out to, 250 different investors and say, hey, chip in $100,000.
Yeah.
And, we end up with $25 million for our down payment.
Yeah.
We go and, get debt on that. Mm-hmm. And then we're able to buy $100 million worth of real estate. And so
on a syndication side, maybe you do know this, maybe you don't, like, I'll kind of put it in more simple terms. Maybe I had four or five investors, maybe we're trying to do a $2 million property. Maybe it's, like a 8-plex or a couple 8-plexes or something like that, right? We're not seeing a whole lot of $100 million properties around Lexington or, in some respects. But, that's a little bit easier. Everybody brings a portion of it to the table. Is the financing side, to your knowledge, are they looking the same way they would into each person's individual financing as far as outright financing it? Or there are other versions where you just finance the whole thing with investors only sometimes on a syndication, so there's no bank involved.
Right. Yeah.
Is there any differences in that?
So yeah, let me kind of carry this. And I know this is, maybe an exaggeration.
Yeah.
You don't typically like buy $100 million properties, but it really shows all of the different pieces, right? Sure. And so, if you have these 250 investors, to get those all together, you almost need a full-time person or, a capital raiser, right? So you have capital raisers, you have the operator who acquires and runs the real estate. and then you have the investors that bring the capital, right? And so what happens is you have different groups. So you have the investors can really be passive investors.
Yeah.
And they don't have to really do any of the work. All they have to do is put in their money, and then they get a return every month or every quarter distribution, right, from the profits. And so,
which is definitely a different way of investing for those who want to invest but don't have the time, obviously, to manage looking for properties or, like I said, managing the phone calls that come in or
absolutely,
whatnot.
yeah. So it basically creates two classes of investors. So you have the active investors and the passive investors.
Right.
And depending on where you want to be, then you can be an operator. You can be an active investor, and you can run the properties and everything. But that's a full-time job.
Sure.
And then on the other end of the scale, you can be a passive investor, and you can just put in money, and you can go work your 9 to 5, or you can go run your company, or you can go do other things that are not involved directly in real estate and still generate and reap the benefits of
Correct.
it. So that's the beauty of a syndication, is it really allows different people to come together and be different players and play different roles within that syndication. And so
difference between syndication, though, for each property, assuming in that some respects, you kind of have to do it for every single one, kind of create a new syndicate. So that kind of over time can become cumbersome, or if we want to start taking it to even bigger levels, that's where obviously now we're talking about more of a fund type of thing in that sense, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So when you do a syndication, it's normally one property.
Yeah.
And so if you acquire a property, you do the syndication, you do all of the paperwork, and you get all the investors, you raise all the money, you get all the pieces together, and you close the property. But then you're like, okay, well, now we need to go do that again. And so you got to go basically start over and do the whole process again. And so people that acquire multiple large properties like that in a year, they're like, okay, we have to raise all these funds at just the right time and, do all of these things. Why don't we...
Someone backs out at the last minute and throws the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so... why don't we set up a fund, a real estate investment fund that we can raise capital into and then deploy that capital into different properties, as we acquire them.
Without having to have everyone, there's kind of like a lot more liberty. I guess that's the word, right? I would say as the principal or the people running the fund in that sense, you're not sitting here having to kind of, if I understand it right, with a syndication, you have to get everybody approved. We're doing this property, whereas a fund, there's more liberty of they're taking more ownership of running the acquisition aspect without having to always. Is that correct? In some respects, like the people who are investing in it are even more passive in figuring out what properties that are being invested in. Is that?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah,
because you can really write the terms however you think is best for your investors, or you think it will be best.
Okay.
So there's different ways to do it, but a lot of times what will happen is they'll say, "Hey, this is kind of the criteria of properties that we're looking for." And we're going to raise, say $50 million for this fund. And then as they raise that, then they can identify properties and start acquiring those properties through a period of time. And then they, once they acquire all the properties that they're wanting to acquire, they'll close that fund and let it run 7 years maybe, or depending on how long the time horizon is, and then they'll sell off those properties and then be able to distribute the funds back to the investors.
And there can be different ways you function it, like dividends or things like that. Obviously, the unique aspect of yours is I take it obviously. Yours is obviously very unique in the sense that it's an equity fund, or a real estate equity fund, but there's also a nonprofit aspect to it. Is that correct?
Yes.
In essence, the dividends, or what would be the dividends from rent, are then therefore given out in more of to nonprofit or missions or different groups like that around the country or world, in that sense, that need financial assistance for stuff.
Yeah. So if you think about the example that I gave you early on, where my wife and I would just personally acquire properties and use the cash flow to fund missionaries. it's kind of the same idea, but just on a larger scale.
Right.
And allowing other people to invest with us so that they can generate passive income to give to ministries or different organizations. And so we're working on a way that we can set this up in a way that will allow people to have a greater impact on not only the tenants that are living in the properties, but then also generating funding for these different mission organizations that we're identifying. Yeah.
So I mean, as far as your all's focus, you have not launched officially yet, or you're in the building process of the investors and so forth right now in that sense. And then step 2 would be acquiring the different assets that you guys are focused in on.
Right. Yes. So basically, how we've viewed the syndication industry and the commercial real estate industry is that the key players are the operators. They will make or break the deal.
Okay.
And so just like a professional, baseball player can handle a bat really well, and you or I, playing against them, we might not be able to handle the same bat very well, right? So those are like the professional athletes that can really handle the deals. No matter really if they're good or bad deals, they'll make it a good deal.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you have a bad operator, it doesn't matter how good the deal is, they're still going to mess it up, or, they might steal your money and run. So we're being very careful and identifying the best operators that we can find and vetting them, building relationships with them, and building partnerships with them so that we can really leverage all of their experience and expertise in their team, because they've already, been doing this for decades.
I see.
And they have a team, they have a track record and everything. And we're just simply the capital raisers coming alongside them and putting, bringing investors into those deals. So that's the way that we're creating this in a way that, we don't need to go out and, do this for 30 years to get the experience. We can almost automatically get the experience by partnering with the right team members, if that makes sense.
So it's kind of building a company, but you're going to really be, in essence, kind of either partnering or subbing out a big portion of the actual acquiring or of the real estate, or figuring that out. It's, again, you're kind of more the relational, finding the funding partners in that sense, and you're kind of partnering with somebody who can help actually do the acquisition portion of it, of basically what you all have identified as what your target market that you're kind of looking at. It's like, do I follow that correctly?
Yeah. So, you have 3 main roles in a syndication. You have the capital raiser, so that would be us. You have the operator that really brings the deal together. They find the real estate and run the real estate. And then you have the manager. And a lot of times what we found is the operator and the manager are the same person.
Sure.
Or they have a vertically integrated company that has already been managing the properties and everything. So
interesting.
Yep.
So, I mean, it could be real estate that's all over the country in that sense, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So the operators, they identify the right markets to purchase in.
Yeah.
And then they really drill down in those markets and find submarkets and say, okay, we want to focus on these submarkets within these markets, and can really analyze a lot of different real estate. There's one operator that we're looking at in Texas, and he looks at the 3 largest markets in Texas, and he analyzes around 1,000 deals per year, and really only purchases maybe 7 to 10. Large commercial property deals.
It takes a lot of work. People think it's like, oh no, it's
So the cream of the crop, the top 7% of what he's looking at is what he's purchasing.
Wow. That's exciting. I mean, and so the podcast is there more a way to kind of get the word out, I assume, in some ways, as well as probably a good way to connect with potential people who would be interested in something like that.
Yeah, the way that I look at it really is the fund is a tool that we're trying to craft for people who want to take their generosity to the next level and really impact more lives here and around the world and create godly legacies. Yeah. And so we want to create it so that it's a one-stop shop for them to be able to utilize that tool. And then the other side of it is, creating the podcast really allows us to share stories of some of these incredible people that we're coming across and networking with, and who are really doing big things, who have been very successful in their business and their career, and have then realized that there's a level above that, really moving from kind of that personal success to a significance in God's kingdom and pursuing things of God, and really advancing His kingdom instead of building their own.
Right.
And so they've found incredible joy and blessing from doing that. And so we want to really share those stories with other people. Yeah.
Switching up gears here a little bit, any personal goals that you're working on 2022 or have already accomplished?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think launching this podcast is one of the biggest goals.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to launch tomorrow.
That's right.
That's really exciting. And God has just been working through that already. So I'm excited about that.
Favorite date night restaurant for if you guys are going out to dinner?
Probably Malone's.
Malone's? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Malone's in that sense. I mean, I feel like, we can each always find something that we love there in that sense. If you're not doing, obviously, podcasting, real estate investing, or thinking about entrepreneurial businesses to start, I'm sure you're prone to do like I am. What are you all doing for fun around Kentucky?
Well, that's a good question. We travel quite a bit.
Yeah.
We've actually been, we just got back from Panama from a mission trip there.
Okay.
And that was incredible. My sister got married. We were on vacation for a week. And then my wife just got back from West Palm Beach, she's in full-time ministry, and she was there for kind of looking at how they run a multi-site church down in South Florida, and how they do, how they're reaching the next generation and everything. Yeah.
See, I didn't mean specifically fun only in Kentucky, but this one will be more specific. And then what is some of your favorite things about Kentucky? Born and raised?
So it's a beautiful state.
Yeah.
I would say catching a sunset on horse country is pretty cool.
Goodness.
And then probably like kayaking the rivers. I need to get into
that. Our neighbor just got like 5 kayaks because they have like triplets, and they are kayaking a ton now. I'm like, where are you going kayaking here? But they're always like doing it like every night. So I got to figure out here locally where they're like going like on a nightly basis. But that would be fun. I mean, I need to get back into doing some of that. I haven't done it, I think, since college, probably in some respects. You didn't know this was coming, but I mean, I know just for those who may be interested, there's a lot of really cool people around the world that are just using entrepreneurship in a faith-based way, kind of thing, to really impact communities around the country or around the world, or people groups around the world. And so obviously there's a thing coming up here if you want to give a quick shout out to that. I think it's next month, right?
Yes, absolutely. So
yeah, go ahead and tell us about that real quick in case anyone wants to reach out about attending this.
Yeah. So I've come across this organization called Faith Driven Investor, and they also have a Faith Driven Entrepreneur side. And it's really a large group of people that want to use their business for kingdom purposes, or they want to use their investment for kingdom purposes. Mm-hmm. And they are having an online conference on September 28th and 29th. 28th is entrepreneur, and then 29th is the investor. Mm-hmm. And we're actually hosting a watch party here in Lexington for, really it's open to anyone who, would like to come and hear. They have incredible speakers, and last year it was really phenomenal. Really good teaching, really good connection with local people who are wanting to really live generous lives and impact more people.
Yeah, I got to do it last year. I'm not sure yet on this year if we'll get to, but I know, getting to meet a few other people in the area who are like-minded or investing or real estate or entrepreneurial, as well as just kind of seeing really cool stories, even from like people in Africa, certain countries there, like local people in Africa that are like business minded as well, and the opportunity, which I find that fascinating. That's another topic for another day. Just what Africa, there's so much opportunity. The opportunity that there is in Africa, just from a business and entrepreneurial standpoint, but also how much impact that could have on local people groups is just absolutely a fascinating topic. I kind of think about a lot in some respects. So you can kind of see this really cool picture of like things happening all over the place, even just outside of America, which was I wasn't expecting, I guess, when I attended that. So
yeah, it's very paradigm shifting and opens up your perspective to see, what is happening around the world and what people are doing and what God is doing. Yeah, and it's really neat. Yeah.
So if someone wants to potentially come to that, what's the best way to connect with you on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We can put a link in the show notes with how to do that, and then where to go to do that.
Is there a website they could look at?
Yes. That sense, so faithdriveninvestor.org.
Okay.
Or faithdrivenentrepreneur.org.
And there's a way to see local watch parties and to find it through that.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, Daniel, I appreciate you coming on the show today. As always, I want to thank everybody for listening. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you back next week for another episode of the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. Daniel, thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, Landry.
Thanks.
To learn more about this podcast, visit our page at keystothecommonwealth.com. To connect with Landry regarding insuring your investment portfolio, email Landry at novainsuranceGroup.com or call 859-687-2004.